First of all, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We had a good number of people actually registered for today's event. I think start of the year, there's a lot going on. So we build this as our half-year agency update. For those that are new to Pimento, a huge welcome to you in particular. I'm Stephen Knight. I'm the CEO and founder of Pimento. We're going to record the session as you just heard. For those that would like to, please keep your camera on, smile throughout and wave. There will be the opportunity to ask questions of our very small but beautifully formed panel today at the end of the session. And as ever, obviously, we want to make this as interactive as possible, so don't be shy. The whole idea of the agency update is to provide you with an all-encompassing snapshot of what's happening within the world of independent agencies in particular. It's also going to give us an opportunity to give you feedback on the Pimento survey that we did before Christmas. So that'll be great. And then we'll also then turn to Savanta's tracking study where we'll look at some political, some business and consumer data. This is not a financial review, so we're not going to be getting into in-depth conversations about how agencies are performing. I did a session just before Christmas with Jay Neal of the Agency Works, and we will return to that subject later on in the year. I'd like to thank the Alliance of Independent Agencies for sharing the data that Annabel will present from their People Pulse survey. But first, can I welcome back Oliver Wright, who's the EVP of Public and Corporate Insight at research and polling agency Savanta. As most of you know, Ollie oversees Savanta's work across government and the not-for-profit sector, as well as the company's polling. He's the chief pollster there. Previously, he was managing director at communications and public policy research agency Comres. But first, the wonderful, delightful Annabel Dunstan, who tells me she's just got out for dip. She's been for a swim this morning in Brighton, so glorious weather down at Brighton. As you know, it's a microclimate, it's 85 degrees and sunny down there. She's the founder and CEO of Question and Retain, and very much an accomplished entrepreneur in her own right and founder of Question and Retain. They are a leading insights consultancy specializing in employee experiences, clients and membership tools. So if you are looking to work with an agency that actually helps to survey and ensure that you have sound relationships with your existing clients, then she's the lady you need to talk to. As ever, a copy of the presentations, all three of them, will be made available after the webinar, so you don't have to take any notes. And if you'd like to use any of the information that we're sharing with you today in your own presentations to your clients, please do so. Just remember to credit either Savanta or Question and Retain along with their sponsors, Pimento and the Alliance. That's very good of you. Thank you. And I also got another piece of data which I'll share afterwards from the Office of National Statistics that was released yesterday. So lots of data, lots of information to share. Let's get into it then with Annabel first, and I'll just bring her into screen. So,
thanks, Stephen.
No problem.
Thanks for the mention about my swim. There's a great joke. How do you know if someone's been for a cold water swim in the morning? They tell you.
That's very true. Or their sponsor does.
So thanks for the time this morning. Thanks everybody for making the time. I've got two presentations for you. One is a very brief overview of the Pimento membership survey that was conducted at the back end of last year. And then the second presentation will be the People Pulse. Some of you might be familiar with this, that we run with the Alliance of Independent Agencies, and it gives you an overview of what around 1,000 agency staff are feeling and thinking right now about life in agency land. So if you're not already involved in it, then there are ways for you to get involved in that. And we can come on to that at the end. So I'm now going to share my screen with the two-pager, which I want to now put in. Oh, how do I do this? Enter full screen, that should do it. That clear on the screen? Lovely. So it's just 2 pages. We've condensed 13 questions into 2 slides so that you don't lose the will. But of course, all the devil is in the detail. And I went through the whole of the findings with the Pimento team just before Christmas. So everything that starts to happen in 2025 is a springboard from that you said. So thank you for the time if you did respond. You can see there that middle box, the response rate went up from 2023 by 5 percentage points. So we're now at a response rate of 39%, which is very healthy. We work with a lot of membership organisations, and we know that people get survey fatigue, particularly towards the end of the year. But the aggregate for membership bodies that we're working with is running at about 35%. So you smashed that. Well done, Pimento. And thanks to you as members, because your comments do really, really get heard. And I crack the whip in the background to make sure that they are the good, the bad, and the ugly. I have to say, on this survey, there is much less ugly. Everything has improved. So that's the punchline. It's a spoiler. Everything has gone up from communications frequency, enjoying the frequency. You can see that's gone up by 15 percentage points. And we've pulled out a couple of verbatims. There is a slew of verbatims, hundreds of the things. And we've done the analysis for Stephen and the team to make sure they can really dive into that and act on the data. So positive here, emails are concise and give a good level of information. The positive partner director ratings have gone up again, 17 percentage points rating your partner directors as good or really good. I won't shame anybody, but there have been some really, really lovely high scores. Clearly, there's been a lot of work in 2024 to establish those relationships and build to make sure that you're really benefiting as members. But I always say with that, those 17% that perhaps aren't in the really good or perhaps are saying unsure, it's down to you as an agency leader or your lead within the agency that's looking after Pimento to put that energy in order to get what you want out of it. So if you're not feeling your PD is pulling the stops out for you, then get on the phone, because they really are there and they're working their socks off to try and support you. So let's try and get that up to 100% good or really good for next year. The recommend, so there's two parts to this. 76% of members would recommend Pimento to clients, and that's up 20 percentage points on last year. So some phenomenal shifts there. And similarly, a rise in the number of members who'd recommend Pimento to other agencies. And clearly that is where you can make some extra revenue, and every penny counts in these challenging economic times. If you make a recommend, then money comes your way. And Stephen and your PDs can explain that if that's unclear to anybody, or if you're a wannabe member and you don't understand that whole system, then please do get in touch with the team and they'll be able to help you with that. Most valued aspects of membership. So we gave a smorgasbord and then left it as open choice what people wanted to say. So networking events came up really high. I mean, that's a clear winner. I'll give you the exact percentage if I can find it. Value. I think it was something like 63%. No, sorry, 39% valued the networking events, and then 29% the opportunity for refer and commissions. And I think that's on the rise. I think the benefit of the network is that you're in a group of like-minded people. And if you are attending those in-person networking events, what you've been saying is that it's been a really strong support system to know that other people are, the trials and tribulations of running agency life, to actually meet up in person and have a no-holds-barred chat and warts and all has been really powerful. But on top of that, it's the opportunity to refer. And it's much easier to refer if you met someone in person. So do support these in-person networking events that Pimento put a lot of energy into. There's a much stronger understanding of the referral system. So I said at the head of this that if you didn't understand, then please do lean on your PD to make sure you've got a full understanding of that. But that's really improved. I think there's been a simplification of that, and the technology behind it has been improved. And the managing to track stuff has certainly improved. Also increased agency support service awareness. So these are things like professional services, lawyers, insurance. Personal shout out for Riskbox, who are phenomenal. If you're not already working with them, they will deep dive into your insurance policies. You've got public liability and all the rest, and pick out the holes and flaws at no cost to you, and recommend what you should be pushing your insurance company to be providing you. So Riskbox, if they're on the call, well done to you. Increased agency support services usage. 1 in 4 members have used agency support services, and that's up from 2023 and 2024, which is strong because you're then working with rated agencies, basically, because Pimento don't let anybody in. So it can be inertia around using support services like your accountants and your lawyers and your data suppliers or your IT. So do look into the Pimento network to see if you're looking to refresh that pot, because there's some fantastic players in there. The preference for live events, 78%, a staggering number of members most value the 6 p.m. live networking event. And again, as members, it's up to us to push for what we want. And so your comments behind all of these data points are really helpful in shaping what comes up in 2025. And you'll see some developments over the year as the team put into place some of the recommendations we co-created just before Christmas. Top three topics for future events, and that's held pretty similar. So future perspectives, trends, and future of marketing. I think Stephen and today's call with Ollie sharing what's out there have proved really, really useful. And it's stuff you can play back into your client meetings as well. So I think Pimento's really valued for giving you a real sense of what's happening right now and what's affecting the environment, the economic environment. Senior client perspectives. I know they managed to attract some really good speakers. So that's clearly very valued. And also an overview of different channels is highly rated. So that is a rip-roaring rush through the entire survey. It took more like 2 hours to go through with the team what we've been up to. But as I say, it's so helpful if you leave comments. So next year when this comes around, please let's try and smash that 39% that responded, because every comment does really count and gets heard. So thank you very much. Any questions on that, or I can gallop on to the People Pulse? Anything come up in that?
Yeah, just one question here. How many people replied to the survey? I didn't see that
There
anywhere.
were around 111 responses.
Cool, thanks.
So from the membership, that's a pretty good spread and more than representative. Ollie would concur. I think 39% is representative. But yeah, the more the merrier. And it doesn't stop there, because you've got your relationships with your PDs. So any of these where you're disagreeing with the large majority who are in a very happy place, please speak up. Good. Lovely. So here we are, bedazzling you with numbers. You can see the trend. We've been going for, I think this is our 15th quarter we've been running this for the Alliance. And for those that you aren't familiar with it, we go out to all independent agencies, members of the Alliance, and those that aren't currently members. So it's spread as a link on LinkedIn and through socials. And we've been up to the dizzy heights. In Q2 last year, we got up to nearly 1,000. It's dropped off a little, and that's actually informing. We got feedback from members that they actually wanted to just go to twice a year. So the dates for the future pulses will drop back to just twice a year, and the next one will be the 3rd of February, and then we'll repeat 6 months later on the 18th of August. So dates for your diary, February and August for the People Pulse. And it was felt that it wasn't giving people time to really make significant changes, so they weren't seeing rises in their own agency data or changes, significant changes. And so it was decided it's going to go to 6 monthly. So we saw this starting to drop off and thought, okay, that's what's happening. But we still had 59 agencies that took part, and 35 of them had more than 6 people, which meant those 35 agencies received their own tailored report. So they could then compare, we helped them to compare their results with the bigger pool. So some really valuable data to show what good looked like. I'm just going to move this gallery of rogues up to the top. There we go. We ask 10 questions, and these are pretty much fixed. We maybe change 1, sometimes 2. We have had backlash and we've changed them, but we've stuck with the 10 this year, this quarter. And feeling proud to work at your agency. Do you feel proud to work at your agency? And you can see it's pretty much held steady, although come down from 2023 from 61 down to 53 now, but it's been hovering in the 50s. And as always, there's around 400 to 500 comments per question. We've just pulled out 2, the green being the most positive, and the red a learning curve, I suppose you could call it. So if you look at the green comment, that's the gold standard. That's what you want to be aiming for. So are your people, if you think back at your own agency, your team now, are they saying this kind of thing? The quality of people and the culture is second to none, and the work we produce is some of the best I've seen. I mean, that's an employee engagement award winner in terms of pride of your agency. And then conversely, unfortunately, the culture has become toxic. Now that's a big red flag, obviously. So have you got people in your team, and don't try and identify them, but what's the sense, what's the pulse in your agency right now if you haven't got your own data on this? Respect and trust, are you encouraged to voice your opinions and trusted to get on and do a good job? And of course, this is very interesting with lots of people working from home, hybrid working, flexible working. Has productivity gone up, gone down, stayed the same? That's questions for you as a board to ask. But we have seen a drop off here in trust from 61 the middle of last year down to 55% saying, yes, I am. And in the red here, opinions generally ignored. So after a while, you put your head down and don't bother trying to make positive cultural changes. So for me, I'm fascinated by these. The quant is great, but it's the qual that's so interesting, because those are your springboards for what to do next. So have you got any people who feel are just putting their heads down? And what's beneath that? What's causing them to do that? It might be some mental health issues, but it might well be that they're not feeling heard. So what can you do to coax them out and to actually listen to their views and thoughts? Often the best ideas come from people who are at the coalface. I love this question. How has your experience of work changed in terms of enjoyment and fun in the last 3 months? There's so many global existential things going on. I won't mention the T word. We've got so many shifts happening with wars afoot. So the workplace, those external things can crowd in on that. But what are you doing as an agency leader to try and ensure that, as far as possible, what you can control, your culture is one where people feel they can be their creative selves and bring their fun, full selves to work? So we've got a nice positive here. There seems to be a renewed sense of fun and enjoyment after intense pressures experienced through summer. So we know that enjoyment is very linked to amount of work and resource. But conversely, been a significant increase in stress and negativity due to workload. So two sides of the coin there. But only 14% saying that it's been more fun, and the majority sitting in this middle bit, about the same or less. And we've got these 1 or 2% saying it's never been fun. I think it's time for a career change. Or I'd rather not say, which would kind of indicate they're not having the best time. Which is happily low numbers, but still, in an agency of 100, that's a person. So are you looking out for them? D and I, big sigh from the stateside, what's happening on that front, but UK must not let their guard down on this. We know it links to engagement, retention, loyalty of staff, if you as an agency are doing the right thing and benefiting from a wide range of opinion approaches and lived experience within your agency, because your customers and clients and stakeholders all have that going on. So the poorest comment here, we have minimal diversity and minimal women in senior leadership positions. Yawn, no excuse for that anymore. And then you've got a whole smorgasbord up here. I love that word, smorgasbord. With great stuff going on in one agency, and it's not complicated to do this stuff, and there's plenty of training out there if you don't know where to start. So take those baby steps, rant over, but yeah, take action. If it's one thing you do in the first quarter, add it to your list. Learning and development. We know people come to work. Yes, you've got to do all the hygiene factors of the right salary, pay, rewards, benefits, good clients to work on. But people want to learn and grow generally. And if you haven't got people that want to learn and grow, then have another think, because your learners and growers are your succession management. So those that eagerly take up training and push for it are going to be the eager beavers that are going to help you run the agency going forward. So are you offered training? Age-old concern here is that agencies offer training and then people don't take up the time to do it because they are very client-focused, very natural, and workload can get in the way. But what can you do in order to support people getting to do this stuff? And bite-sized training seems very popular. Again, the Alliance, part of their raison d'etre is to offer, oh, did you hear the French there? Raison d'etre. Part of their raison d'etre, I'm going to say it again, is to offer training, and they have so many different training options and ways to get involved. So do give them a holler if there's something that you could be offering. But I think people's concentration spans and ability to time manage means that bite-size online and quick video tutorials seems to be taking precedence at the moment. Sustainability. How do you rate your agency's approach? It seems to be wallowing at around only a quarter saying it's really good, just over a third saying quite good, and 23% here saying unsure. which must be around a communications challenge. It might well be that you're doing good stuff, but not clearly conveying that to the wider team. And 14% in not very good or poor. So 1 in 12, 1 in 11 people saying things aren't where they should be. Can you create eco champions within your team? Don't take the load as leaders. Can you help identify who are your ambassadors, your eco warriors, your Kirsty and Rexes, if you're Archers fans, within the agency land? Does anyone listen to the Archers anymore? I don't know. Yep, Stephen's an Archers fan. And then setting some targets. So looking to achieve excellent ESG credentials and have a target to reach net zero by January 2026. So very strong target they've set themselves there. What else do I want to say on that? I think attracting new and upcoming talent, then if you're not doing something on sustainability front, then you're missing a trick, because that is a way to entice and interest and excite the next generation coming in, because that is very much uppermost in their minds. Right, we're coming into the home straight now. Well done, everybody. Leadership and comms. I just find this extraordinary. We're in the comms business. Why isn't there 100% saying that leadership communicate really clearly? Now, there are individual pockets of excellence, and those agencies that have their tailored report, several of them have got 100% in this area. But the aggregate across those several hundred people we've talked to is just a third saying it's really clear. So what's going on there? Carpenter's doors hanging off as in the communications business. What are you doing internally? I know from my experience of growing an agency, when you get to about 20 people, it moves beyond feeling like a family, and suddenly you start to get levels and layers, and people can get sidetracked if you win a big client, that you then get a team that becomes siloed just looking after that big client. So what are you doing? Just have a sense of what are the touch points for your team of understanding what you're doing. It can't just be a monthly broadcast of all the good stuff. It's got to be a communication, a conversation. So think about having cross-level focus groups within your team, just to make sure there's clear understanding, because communication, we know, is two-way. So again, this red comment gives you an approach to how to deal with this stuff. Each one of these questions is such rich fodder for how you can focus on improving your agency culture. Mental health score, blimey. This is a grim picture. It's based on the NPS scale. We've seen a trend very consistently. It starts better at the beginning of the year and then drops down and down and down. So we're hoping in February 2025 we'll spring back up again. But it's hovering at around -19 in this pulse taken in November. Clearly Christmas pressures, financial pressures, it's cold, everyone's down. Now that we're past Blue Monday, Blue January, this should start to track up again. So -9, as you know, 0 on the NPS scale is the medium point. Anything above 0 is deemed good, but we haven't felt good, it looks like, since Q1 of 2023. So yes, mental health is clearly a very personal thing, and you as an employer can do so much, but it's about having the first aiders in place that can spot the signs to then signpost people on to get support. So do please make sure you've got that in place if you haven't already. Mental health first aiders is an absolute no-brainer and a baby step to take. Do you intend to remain at your current agency? Oh, this is such a good question, because you want to know if people are heading off, but they're not going to tell you. But this anonymous survey gets the data out. 3/4 happily, or just under 3/4 saying, yep, I'm intending to stay. But we've got this 11% saying I'd rather not stay, and 3% saying I intend to leave the industry or I intend to join another agency. So 13%, over 1 in 10 aggregate of agency staff are thinking about being on the move. And recruitment agencies who have suffered are hugely tenacious. They're on the phone. They are speaking to your people right now whilst you're on this call. So what is it you're doing to identify your lifeboat crew, those that you want to stay, your succession management, your movers and shakers, your hunters and gatherers? Have you identified them? What are you doing? Are you interviewing them now to understand why they're staying? And yep, some natural churn is going to happen. People want to do different stuff. But are you making sure you're keeping an eye on your rising talent to make sure they stick with you? And then we've got recognition. all part of staying on at an agency. And we've got over 70% saying, yes, I do, or for the most part. And positive here, I feel really supported by my manager and frequently praised when I do a good job. It's just like school. We all like stickers. I mean, sticker charts are a bit naff, but what can you do to reward and recognise your team? And sometimes it's the smallest of things. I remember as a junior in starting out in agency land, I received a personal letter from the CEO, handwritten letter, just commenting on something I'd done well that month. And it honestly, I've still got that letter. Those things mean something, particularly at the start of your career. So simple things, doesn't need to cost a lot to make sure you've got a really clear recognition and rewards program in place. And this negative comment here is around resource planning, but involve your team, get them being part of the problem. Last two slides, actually the penultimate last two slides, the top 10 topics that came up when we gave a dangerous thing. We said an open question, what else do you want to be talking about or sharing or inquiring about? And the sluice gates opened and 10 different topics came up with a various number of comments and thoughts around it. And of course, this helps inform the Alliance and hopefully Pimento on what people are thinking about, but also it can inform training as well. So I won't read these all out, that'd be too dull, but there's another 5 on the next slide when you'll receive this deck afterwards. So some really good topics in there. And again, it could be for your head of talent or your people within the agency to look at some of these to see if you're getting this right. And then I've suggested 10 discussion points against each question. So you can see the movers and shakers in terms of percentage points in that column there. We've got everything just slightly down, but hovering around the same. But each question here is, I've sat on the data and then thought, well, what would be useful to then have as a discussion? So that could be done at senior leadership team level or take it into the different levels of your business. And what solutions can your people come up with? Because they're going to be the better ones if it's come from them. So you can have an idea there across all the 10 topics. So thank you for listening. Wishing you a happy new year. And I am very pleased that I've got through 2 presentations in my allotted time.
Brilliant work, Annabel, as always, and some really useful insights. And I do say that it's really worth, it's a free service, and if you would like your agency to participate, I'd encourage you to get, I think it's a minimum of 6 people, isn't it, out of your office in order to get a report or thereabouts. Well worth your time. Oliver, sir, we're now going to look at a macro level. We've now looked at the industry, and we're now going to look at what's happening to our country, both politically and I guess more importantly, what's happening to consumer confidence and business confidence. So taking centre stage is Ollie from Savanta. And as I say, we'll share this document with you afterwards. So, Oliver, the floor is yours.
Right. Excuse me. Thanks, Stephen. And yeah, nice to be back. I think last time we were here, we gave an update in what was, I think, the week after the general election. So 6 months on, I'm just going to share sort of where public and business sentiment is generally, but also specifically in relation to the new government. So you may all have seen various bits of polling of the public over the last 6 months in relation to the new government, and us, along with pretty much every polling company, is showing a really tricky start for Labour, both for the individuals and as a whole. When we ask sort of about headline favourability, you can see there the Prime Minister, the Chancellor and government all comfortably much more in negative territory than positive. And I suppose it is concerning for them as a government as they look to progress their policies. Obviously, after what was a significant landslide, they would have hoped and maybe expected to have been sort of seen more positively by the public at this sort of quite early stage. But I think what we've seen just generally is that trust in government, regardless of party, is eroded. And they came in and we're quickly having to deal with coverage of things like accepting gifts, the whole debate around the 22 billion black hole, and then the fiscal measures that have been introduced. And I think all of that has left the public feeling pretty sceptical. That said, Keir Starmer is still seen very much as the best option for Prime Minister at the moment. That may say more about the alternatives than, as we've seen, sort of positivity towards he himself. What is interesting is with this one, if we throw Nigel Farage into the mix alongside Keir Starmer and Kemi Badenoch, he slots firmly into second place, and Kemi Badenoch's percentage drops from 29, I think, to 12. So that, I think, demonstrates the scale of the issue that the Conservatives are also facing here. In the run-up to the election, Labour was sort of comfortably seen as the best place to tackle all policy areas. And while they are still comfortably seen as best place to deal with health and the NHS, housing, transport and education, opinion beyond that is actually an environment, but beyond that is fairly split amongst some of these other areas, and that wasn't the case pre-election. So I think what we're seeing here is the public aren't seeing enough evidence of how Labour are going to actually be hoping to make a change, a positive change, that people can sort of see evidence and recognise in their lives. And I think they are really going to have to start showing evidence of how they are making an impact through the 5 missions that they are talking about. So against that backdrop, cost of living is still very much seen as the top issue amongst the public. So I think that is a really important piece of context that is ahead of then health, economy and immigration, which, as you may expect, make up the sort of rest of the top four issues. Moving on, and a bit of a focus on businesses now. So first of all, how do businesses feel about the new Labour government before we go on to sort of broader economic optimism? It really varies by size is the answer there. So through our business tracker, we split by SMEs and then larger businesses. And what we can see here is that SMEs are much more likely to be pessimistic than larger businesses, and they're also more likely to be pessimistic than optimistic when it comes to the impact of the new Labour government on their own business. On the other hand, you can see that larger businesses are much more likely to be optimistic than they are pessimistic. And that pattern is very similar when we ask about businesses' views on the impact of the government, again, on the UK economy. So the majority of large businesses are optimistic, but half of SMEs here are pessimistic. Ahead of the budget, polling of businesses got on the front page of City AM, and it was specifically polling which was asking businesses how they were feeling about the upcoming budget. And that polling showed businesses were most likely to feel concerned and apprehensive, and only 1 in 5 sort of feeling positive at what might be being announced. We then asked businesses a few questions after the budget, and there's perhaps at best tentative positivity overall here among businesses who are, they're more likely to say that they thought the budget will improve the outlook again for their business. This is not the economy, for their business, than worsen it, 39%. Versus 30. But I think that overall picture really masks differences again by business size. So when we ask about whether businesses support the measures that were announced or not, only 1/3 of SMEs said they did support the measures, whereas 3 in 5 of large businesses said they would support them, or they did support them. That said, I think as well, businesses generally, as a sentiment, feel that the budget didn't go far enough and there aren't enough measures in there to support businesses. SMEs particularly, they're the most likely to think the budget didn't contain enough measures to support them. So pretty much 2/3 of SMEs feeling like that. But that said, a majority of large businesses also feel that way. Interestingly, these percentages are pretty similar to what we saw representing the views of businesses following the last Conservative budget in March 2024. Specifically regarding the rise to national insurance contributions, the pattern switches a little bit, which is what you might expect. Large businesses most likely to say that this will hurt them. And not on this slide, but I think another interesting point is when we had a follow-up question asking, okay, so what's your response to this going to be? The most common response was that their businesses would pass at least some of the cost onto their customers. So amid a new government coming in, start of a new year, the sort of challenges facing businesses for the year ahead are not really changed. They're quite fundamental challenges, focusing on the impact of still sort of rising energy and fuel prices, just simply remaining profitable, having to deal with increased competition and a drop in customer demand. Those issues are not really changing, regardless of the context of a new government. So moving on, where does all this leave us in terms of sort of overall business optimism? So this chart is based on Savanta's long-running survey of financial decision makers. It's our Market View Business Confidence Index. It's been running, as you can see, for over 10 years now. You can see on the far right, there's been a slight uptick towards the current health of the UK economy after a fairly sort of steady 18 months or so. But you can see there, it's still kind of very much in line with the sort of depths that we saw back in COVID in sort of 2020, 2021. Not really any improvement since that point. So it'll be interesting to see whether that uptick continues as we enter 2025. Interestingly, and this is based off the same survey, while business optimism is highest for large businesses, and that always tends to be the case, the uptick that we saw on the previous slide is coming from the startups and small businesses. So there's maybe some shoots there amongst those smaller businesses. Looking at a different data source now, so our monthly business tracker, what we see here is optimism for respondents' own business. So the previous one was about UK economic health. This is about respondents' own business. That has continued to rise through last year and into Q3. Slight drop off we saw in December, so it'd be interesting to see where that goes. Has that peaked in Q3 last year? And the green line there is the proportion who expect their business to grow, and the red line is the proportion who expect their business to decline over the next 12 months. The pattern is very similar when we ask the same question, but instead of about their business, we ask it about their industry sector. Very, very similar pattern. And finally, just to, I should say on this one as well, there's our data here also shows that the pattern is again similar to what we've seen in other surveys here. So the optimism is greatest amongst larger businesses consistently, whether that's about the respondent's own business or whether it's about their industry sector. So the final sort of data source I've pulled in here is from our very long-running survey with the London Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It's the longest running survey of businesses in London. Here what we can see is that turnover and profitability expectations for their own business, again, and that's important, is holding up pretty well. Overall company prospects had been rising, but has sort of dropped off a little bit. It's a little bit unsure what might be causing this disparity there between the sort of financial measures and overall prospects, but that's kind of what the data is showing. However, when it comes to economic outlooks, this isn't about their business anymore, it's about the UK economic outlook, the London economic outlook. That has dropped in Q4. So we've now got that sort of dotted line, which represents 0. We've got basically as many businesses saying they expect the economic outlook to worsen as the proportion who expect the outlook to improve. So just trying to sort of pull some of that together, because I think there's a couple of interesting things which are coming through. So first of all, the issues which are sort of most front of mind for people, top of the list, cost of living, followed by the NHS, economy, immigration. But the public are far from convinced at the moment about the impact the new Labour government is having. And neither are businesses, and particularly the smaller businesses. And I think that's really interesting, that pattern. Businesses, regardless of size, didn't think the budget went far enough, and national insurance contributions rising expected to hurt them. However, businesses remain overall optimistic about their own business, particularly the larger businesses. But when it comes to outlook for the overall economy, that remains fairly subdued. So I don't know if there's something going on there around, people feeling just more optimistic, maybe hopeful about their own business. They've got more control over that, but tied in with maybe a lack of certainty around where the new government is going and the direction of the country. There isn't that reason to be optimistic for the broader economy at this point. So that's it for me. But yeah, really happy to answer any questions as usual.
Thank you very much. So it's got a bit of a mixed bag there, really, Oliver. I mean, it seems like most of your studies were tracking pretty well up until September Q3, and then post-budget, confidence has been whacked both in the larger businesses and the SMEs in particular.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where some of those trends go in as we move into this year. But yeah, there was definitely a mixed response to that budget, and I think a lot of concerns over what it means for businesses, and the fact it's not really seen as addressing and providing enough support measures for businesses for economic growth.
Okay. Listen, we have our spokespeople and experts now on screen. If anybody would like to ask any questions, there's been quite a few questions that have been coming into the chat box, and most of those have been answered as we go along, and lots of strong opinions coming in, so it's really helpful. So that's happy to give sort of the opportunity now. If anybody would like to ask any questions directly to the panel, just come off mute. They may not have the answers, they may have to get back to you if it means them going back into the data, but please do take the opportunity if you'd like to. You're all shy today, aren't you?
Ollie, Simon here. In the survey of attitudes towards the budget, this business survey, you talked about large business divisions by business size. Did you look at it by business sector in terms of sentiment by different business categories?
Yeah, well, there is some breakdown. We can only really draw sort of quite limited conclusions by sector, but I can certainly have a look. I haven't got it in front of me just to see if there's anything which is maybe coming through as to where maybe the biggest concerns are. But yeah, the most obvious differences are definitely by size.
Okay. Thanks.
I have a quick question. Oh, sorry. Yeah, James from Hub. So we're based up in Leeds, and I just noticed that 48% of businesses, certainly down in London, expect things to improve. Do you think the gap between maybe what's happening in London and the rest of the UK is going to get wider this year or narrow? Because that's something which seems to be a debate every single time we have either a parliamentary election or a budget or something like that. And I think, as you've just pointed out, Stephen, as well, confidence seemed to be okay until it took a bit of a whack after then. And it's just interesting how it reverberates differently around different areas of the UK. I realise that's about 3 different questions in one as well.
I mean, I suppose from my perspective, if I sort of try and base the response in the data, I don't have anything for other parts of the UK. We've been running this survey, say, with the London Chamber of Commerce for over a decade now, so that is focused on London businesses. We don't run anything similar for sort of other regions of the UK. I mean, it's obviously going to be a challenge, I think, for the new government. How do they promote sort of economic prosperity and growth in regions outside London? Again, maybe it comes back to the fact that overall businesses and saying there aren't enough measures in there to support them, and that may well be part of it. I don't know. Yeah, maybe for next time we can look at some regional differences and see if anything's coming out from our own data.
Good stuff.
I mean, certainly, James, it might be interesting. Obviously, changes in the rates system and the rateable values, that's obviously going to impact London businesses probably worse than it will do elsewhere around the UK. And I think in previous downturns, we've always seen London bounce back quicker. However, I'm going to be a bet that this time round, actually, the likes of Manchester, Leeds, Liverpool, and elsewhere will bounce back quicker because they're fighting off a lower cost base. Their creativity and the sorts of agencies that are in each of those areas, take Bristol as a good example in terms of the tech sector, are very much class leading. So I would suspect we're going to see a quicker recovery in the regions than London, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think you might be right there. Certainly, business appetite seems to be good. At the start of this year, we've had lots more inquiries, certainly, than we did in Q4 of last year. So I think that could be, again, resonating across maybe the north, and it could be other areas of the country. But I think you could be right with that, yeah.
That's so nice to hear a positive view. Thanks, James.
No worries. I'm always a glass half full kind of guy.
I love that.
Well, I like that too. And I would concur with that view. I mean, the first 2.5 weeks of the new year, we've had a much higher level of inquiries, both in terms of memberships, but equally too in terms of brand inquiries. And we're getting into diaries. There are more pitches that appear to be around. The AAR and I also believe oyster catchers are all reporting at high levels of, and campaigners high levels of pitching this year. It's liking it a little bit like the car market, where we actually saw people hang on to their cars for longer during COVID, and of course post-COVID they went out and bought lots of motor cars. I just hope to hell that brands have been holding back in the last 2 years because they've been uncertain are now actually going to actually release and start to recognize they need to spend money not just on performance marketing but actually also on brand building. So fingers crossed in that area. Any other questions? No? Okay, well, so I'm going to give you some time back, time to grab a coffee. I'd like to thank today's panel of experts and also their sponsors in turn for allowing us to share the data with you today. We've got a host of events coming up over the next few weeks. We're going to share those with you in the chat box now. We've got our club, the 5 p.m. club, which is our sort of speed networking event coming up. That's very, very popular. And that'll happen, I believe, in I've lost my thread here, haven't I? In a couple of weeks. When is it?
30th, next week.
30th. Okay. And then we've also got for younger members, Club 30 is back on the roads soon. So if you haven't registered, if you have members of your agency aged between 20 and 32, and you'd like to get them out of the office, get them actually engaging and meeting with other young people in other agencies, Spencer leads that. He can give you all the details on that. And we have 2 really important events coming up in the agency support space. Do you want to just talk about those, T?
Yeah, absolutely. So next Wednesday, the 29th, we've got navigating employment law change, but we're looking at it from an HR perspective, a legal perspective, and also from a recruitment perspective. So we've got 3 guys on the team in the panel there. Then on the 12th of Feb, we've got another agency support event looking at awards and the importance of awards and how you can benefit from those, but also write those and prepare for those.
Yeah, I mean, in a world of 25,000 independent agencies, it's a great way to be able to differentiate your agency by actually getting a few gongs, building awareness of what you do, and also, frankly, it's a great way to recognize and reward talent within your agency. So we'll be talking about what awards you should be entering, how best to create a winning award entry, and so on and so forth. The HR event is for not just HR people who operate in your business, but also for owners. There's a myriad of new legislation that's come down from the new government, and it's going to have all sorts of impacts on your businesses. So it's going to be half an hour well spent learning from the professionals as to what you need to do as a business now, and how you need to enact some of these things that the government have put in place. Some don't come into effect until April, others are already here. So do join us for that. But that's it for today. Thank you very much indeed. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. And if you didn't, do let me know. And if you did, also let me know. Have a wonderfully busy day, and we'll see you all very soon. Thank you once again. Bye-bye.